afternoon all you Fast Draw UK members, and welcome to you non-members. My name's Big D, I'm the chair and one of the founders of Fast Draw UK. You've asked us for a bit of a demo on how to strip down a Trinity and put it back together, so that's what we're going to do. This is for you. Okay, this is a 4 3/4 Trinity Colt. May as well prove it. There you go, Trinity England, patent number, and there's your date. So nice and simply, what we're going to do is we're going to strip the whole thing down, we're going to show you all the pieces, and then we're going to quickly put it back together, he says. Anyway, what we're going to do is, first thing we're going to do is we're going to take off what we call the back strap, that's this piece here, and we're going to take off the trigger guard, which is this piece here. That is the simplest bit on this gun to do. Easiest bit to take off is 6 screws, simple as that. So we've got 2 at the back, and the top. One thing I will mention as we're taking this down, make sure you've got a flat surface, something where you can see all your parts, because otherwise, I tell you now, you will lose them. And when you lose them, you won't be happy. Next one is the bottom screw. Let's get that. Oh, so that one's a little bit shorter, so we'll make a note of that. So the 2 long ones go in the back, and the small one goes in the front. Bit of a wipe, just so you don't get too mucky. So, mainspring. Again, 1 screw. Simple as that. 1 screw, there's your mainspring. Turn that round, so that fits into there. Just line it up as you go if you can. Okay, the next 3 screws. Trigger guard, really simple. Don't forget, some of these Trinities and Staffordills are over 20-25 years old, so it might take a little bit of wiggling to get a few of the bits off. But as you can see, 2 screws are still in there. They do come out, so you can just drop those out like that. Nice and simple. And there's your grip section. Okay, now starts the interesting bits. The internals. So inside your Trinity, you've got, at the rear, starting from the rear moving to the front, you've got the hammer. So this is your hammer, just here, and obviously the screw. This is your trigger. You then have a locking bolt at the top here, so just there. Then you have what we call a fork spring or a trigger spring, and then the screw that holds that piece in there. So what we're going to do is, before taking those little bits out, is we're going to give it 2 clicks. We're going to press the centre pin, take out the cylinder rod, and just drop out your cylinder. Easy as that, really is simple. Okay, back into the safe position, and now what we're going to do is take out the other little bits. So we'll start first with the screw you can see first, which is your trigger spring screw. Okay, nice and simple. There's your screw, there's your trigger spring. Okay, this is one of the temperamental parts in the Trinity. We will come back to that shortly when we've got everything laid out. But this is one of the more temperamental parts in the Trinity. So these are subject to break quite often, quite regularly, or become weak. That's your trigger spring. The next part, we have your trigger, as you can see, and we have the locking bolt, which is just next to it, which is that part there. So what we're going to do is we're going to move the gun round, so working from front to back this time, we're firstly going to take out the locking bolt. Okay, there's your screw, that's all it is, nice small little piece there, and your locking bolt will drop out. And there's your locking bolt. Now moving on to the trigger. Next screw forward. Nice and simple. Really easy on this one. So again, 1 screw. Unscrew. There's your screw there. And trigger just drops out. So on the trigger, if anything goes on your trigger, it's your trigger sear. So it's this back bit here. If something goes wrong or it wears, it's this part that goes wrong. So what will happen is your hammer will be pulled back, but it won't quite lock in. So it'll just ride forward slightly, and it won't quite keep onto the the sears on your hammer, which again I'll show you shortly. So that's your trigger. So moving back again for the final time is your hammer. So it's the biggest screw normally in your Trinity, and normally the easiest to get out, which is quite nice. So nice big thick hammer screw. And what will happen now is your hammer has also got what's called a pull arm. So if you watch inside the frame, here, when I pull this hammer back, you'll see a piece of metal come out forward. There you go. Now that's your pull arm. So the way we get the hammer out is pull back slightly, nice and gently, and simply just slide it down. And there's your pull arm. Now your pull arm is not physically connected to the hammer. We can take it apart, but inside your Trinity or inside your frame, you have a pull arm slot just there. That's your pull arm slot. So when we put it back together in a minute, I'll show you where that goes. Okay, so that's your pull arm. What we're going to do? Okay, we've had a quick clear up. We'll identify some of the parts on the front row especially very shortly. We've got one more thing to do, really, from the frame. Well, two. So ejector rod and ejector rod casing. As the weather sets in, it's a lovely rainy day here in the Midlands. Okay, so ejector rod, spring and case. Simple as that. One screw, it's in the middle. I normally leave it in there so you don't lose it, because that one normally can be slightly differently shaped to some of the others. Maybe a bit shorter, maybe a little bit narrower. On this one we look okay, however, there it is. That is your Trinity pretty much stripped down. You have got a cross pin here, we can take that out. It's really, really easy. These are the parts that normally go missing. So you've got two parts to your cross pin. You've got the long screw with spring, and then the short bit, which is the bit that normally goes missing. So again, I just screw them together, put them down on the table, so at least I know where they are. Right, so this is your Trinity, pretty much all stripped down. The cylinder gate can come off if you've got a Allen key. Normally that little hole there, that can tighten it, so you can tighten that gate just with one little turn, or unscrew it and the whole thing comes out. Okay, so we've stripped it down, we know what's what, we know which bit's which, we know which bits we need to look at, which bits we don't. We've hopefully kept everything together to an extent. So now the fun begins. And what we're going to do is we're going to attempt to put this back together. First, easiest bit really, if you want to, maybe put the ejector rod housing on. We can maybe put the cross pin back in. We could do a few things. My personal preference is get rid of the little small parts as quickly as possible. So first one I go with is that cross pin. Just get rid of it, get it back in, don't lose it. So back into the centre here, just there, as you can see. So I'll go back in here. That's it, simple, it's in, one screw, all done. With the pull arm and the pull arm spring comes the hammer. So we take hold of our hammer. That hammer is going to go into the frame. If you remember on the way out we had to put it down the slot, well this time we have to put it back into the slot. So first of all we get our pull arm spring back into the pull arm, nice and safe. So we should have something looking like that. We're then going to get our frame, if we can, turn it around for you so you better view. Get our hammer. The little main hole, big hole there, is obviously for the hammer screw. The small hole at the front is for your pull arm. So nice and simply, that goes into there. Try and keep it all level if you can. If you keep a bit of pressure on the hammer and the pull arm and the spring, you won't drop it all, because this is a bit of a pain, but it does work. Okay, so we're going up this little slot here. So first thing is line the pull arm and the spring up, get it towards the slot. And that's it. That simple as that. That is in. Your hammer is in. So biggest screw on the table, remember, hammer screw. So that's going back in. Just make sure your hammer's lined up. Just give it give it a little few threads left just so it's sticking out, just so make sure you can, bit of movement. Okay, next bit, little bits again, moving to the next little bit, we'll go with the locking bolt. So your locking bolt, now in your frame you've got a locking bolt slot, so this here, put the screwdriver through it, inside the frame is your locking bolt hole. So nice and simply, your locking bolt has got to be seated there, so that's the first thing. So the head of your locking bolt will seat to there, to that hole, so aim for that hole, so the head's in. Okay, if you pull the hammer back slightly, you'll get a bit of movement, and the back end of the locking bolt will just go in, it will slot in. It's really, really simple. So next one is your screw to hold that in. So again, working from the larger side, get your screw. It's the first screw this time. Again, leave a little bit of movement so you can have a mess around shortly. Okay, so that's in, that's now in. Next bit, trigger. So your trigger, there's only one place for it to go, there's only one screw hole left. So it's going to go just on the inside. And again, what I do is I pull the hammer back slightly, drop my trigger in behind the front screw, so the front screw is already there, so it gives you a nice little place to rest your trigger, so you can hold it there. Use the screw again from the side. Again, don't screw it in all the way, just give it a little. There you go, so that's in. So that's now locked in. Should have no movement now. Should be locked in there. Okay, hammers at safety, at rest. No movement, nice and solid, it's all in. Okay, the next bit, a few people get a little bit mixed up on. So this is your trigger spring, so your fork spring as we said. So this is really, really simple, really, and it's a little difficult getting into the slot. So obviously you don't put it on your first slot, you put it inside the frame to your second slot, your second screw hole. However, the easy way to remember this is the long side is trigger side, the short side goes to your locking bolt. So nice and simply, when you're looking at it, even if you were looking at it the other way around, so if I was looking at it face on like you are now, the closest thing to this screw hole is the locking bolt. So nice and simply, the shortest leg will fit to the shortest distance to your locking bolt. The longer piece then sits on the little lip of the trigger. The harder bit is actually centralising your screw, so your screw for your fork spring, if you can get hold of it, into the slot, into the hole. Me, I hold the trigger spring down with one finger, and then just nice and easily, don't cross thread, that's the key. Try not to cross thread, try and find its centre. Nice and simply, screw it in, put a bit of pressure. Nice and tight normally. That's it, your insides are pretty much done. Now when that's done, you can then screw in your side screws. So that's it, that's nice and simple. So all your internals are back in. So theoretically, we should be away now when we put everything else in. Right, so what we're going to move on to is the ejector rod housing. Get the front half to the back half again. I like to work front to back. So obviously, your ejector rod is going to slot into your hole there, it's already there. It sits in really nicely, but obviously we've got the rod to go into first. So, now a lot of people when they start putting this in, they grab hold to the end and they start ramming this in this way, and that's not how it goes in, it's the other end. So top end goes to your screw end, that's what you want to be looking for. Top end to your screw end. Simple as, into the slot, little turn, let it drop, and just guide the spring down. Nice and simply now, we should, because our screw is still in the end of our ejector rod housing, we should be able to slot that in. We've got a nice flush, nice and flush there along the barrel, nice and solid. And all we're going to do is centre the screw and screw it in. That. So we'll just make sure that's working. There we go. The next thing is your trigger guard first, because your back strap can't go on until your trigger guard's gone on. So we'll make sure we've got all the screws, that's the key. So your front screw. Your front screw is your short screw. Nice and short, it's probably the shortest one you've got. Your back two are going to go into your last two holes on the back. Something like that. That's how it should look. So make sure we've got something underneath us again. Turn it upside down. Last one. There we go, trigger guards all in. Okay, next is the mainspring. Now, please be careful with the mainspring. The mainspring is probably the easiest way to hurt your little fingers. So the mainspring, nice and simply, is going to go underneath the hammer. It connects to the back strap, or the trigger guard, sorry. So it connects to the trigger guard, goes underneath the back strap, but connects to the trigger guard. That's the screw there. But it's got to go underneath your hammer. So the easiest way, try and turn it sideways, bit of a degree. So what we'll do is we'll screw in nice and gently the mainspring screw. 3 or 4 threads will do for now. So we've got a lot of play, a lot of messing around. That gives us the ease to bend the mainspring and try and get it underneath the hammer. Okay, mainspring, so we've turned it in a few threads. And what we're going to do now, it gives you that little bit of play to bend and get your mainspring underneath your hammer like that. So now what you do, and I'll give you a little trick here. What you do is you screw it into where you would like it. Now your mainspring can do a lot of things for you with a Trinity. So you can actually dictate how heavy you want the hammer, or if you want it a little lighter. And it is simply just screwing and unscrewing your mainspring screw. It's as simple as that. People will tell you might need a new spring, but you don't. All you need to do is screw that in and unscrew it. So what I'll do is I'm going to screw it a little tighter, because I like a little bit of a heavier action, nothing major. But you can test it as you're going. Now that's a little heavy, so we're going to just ease that off a little bit more. So just a couple of turns. Again, not so bad, but I'm going to have it just a little bit less than that, I think. One more, I think, should do it really nicely for me. Yeah, there we go. That's great. That's where I want to be. Okay, so everything should be working. Your locking bolt should be going down. Your pull arm should be coming up from the back here. So that should go down. This should come up. The mainspring should work. You should hear all your clicks. So let's have a go. Locking bolts down, which is great. We got safety, which is great. Pull arm's just starting to appear, if you can see it. And there we go. The pull arm is just here. Okay, so we're nearly there. We've got a few pieces to go on. Main bit is the back strap. So again, nice and simple. Straight over the back. Covers everything up. I start with the bottom screw. So your bottom screw, nice and easy. Drop that in. Find the centre. Screw it together. Again, don't screw it all the way in quite yet. Last two screws, again, we're leaving that little bit of play just to make sure that they will centre into their own holes. I then screw these in nice and tight, keep them nice and solid. Get them all done. And the bottom one, never forget the bottom one. Everything should be nice and tight now, your bottom ones, your top ones. Before you put the cylinder in, just go around them. Don't be afraid. Just go around everything, make sure everything's tight. So that one's great, that one's great. Don't over tighten, because you'll never get them out. That's it, we're back together. So all we've got to do is put the cylinder back in. Okay, 2 clicks, open your cylinder gate. Locking bolts down so it's out of the way, pull arms out of the way so there's nothing there to hamper. Drop your cylinder straight back in. Okay, cylinder rod, your little cross pin, give it a little push, hopefully it's loose enough. There it is, and that's in. That's your pull arm spring going, working really nicely. You can hear it clicking out on the ratchet to your pull arm. Lock it all in together, make sure it's all solid, and that should be it. So hopefully when we index it, it should cycle. Okay, so index, we have a cycle. So there we go, nice and simply, just a FD UK Fast Raw 101 of stripping and putting it back together. Thanks for watching.